Mine has a separate pump unit, very similar to the inboard-outboard models. And it is a single ram. Okay, so here's a picture. You can see here just a single unit, single big cylinder with a big hydraulic ram. This is they call the System C, one cylinder tilt and trim. Okay, so just checking, looking at the wiring, and on this particular model, the brown and black wire are for the gauge. And so this is kind of a weird clip. Some people have never seen them before. Kind of looks like that. Basically all it is a bracket that goes over the connections on each side so they don't come apart. So I just take a screwdriver, see, just stick underneath here and pop those out of that holder. So you can see that holder right there. So I got the two wires apart, and I turn on my key. And I would assume that I would get voltage on one of these. One of them's got to be signal back, the other one's got to be voltage into the unit. And I have no voltage, so I got to check and see where that power comes from. It's either going to be at the pump or up at the gauge. So I think potentially that's my issue. So I'm going to take a look at this and see if I can figure out why I am not getting any voltage. Here you can see that trim pump inside that I was talking about right here. So anyway, that brown connection that goes from the gauge according to the manual comes in right here. I can see that brown one right there. Okay, well, sorry I didn't get more video on this deal. It ended up being a multi-day test and had to get parts and etc. So anyway, here's what happened. After going through and testing, I found out, number one, that my gauge was bad. I took the gauge and I removed the sending wire, which is the brown and the white wire. Okay, so by removing that, the gauge should go one way or the other, right? It either is going to go full up or full down. So once that happens, then you take a wire from your ground. I had a little jumper that I did from my ground here, and I took that and I touched it to that brown white wire. And I should get it going the opposite direction. So it's like a rheostat and it's a ground, so the more ground it gets, it changes the direction of that gauge. So anyway, I had zero, nothing. The gauge didn't do anything. It didn't go up, it didn't go down. So I knew the gauge was bad. So I needed to get a gauge before I even continued to do that. So I did get a gauge. The local guy, all he had was white. So you can kind of see it there. The gauges really don't match in this anyway, so it's not really a big deal to me. I'd have preferred to get black, but white's just fine. So hooked the gauge up. I tested the continuity of the wire, the brown wire, the sending wire, from the gauge back to, there's this little block that sits back on the trim pump. And I tested it clear back there, and I had continuity. So I knew that wire was okay. So I got the gauge all set up, got all my connections soldered. got it all shrink tubed. And run it back, tried it, and nothing. I had nothing. So then I had to decide, is it the wiring from the pump back to the sending unit, or is it the sending unit itself? So the next thing I did was I pulled the sending unit off. So with the sending unit off, I brought it up. I run that ground gauge back up front, hooked it to one side of the sending unit, and hooked the brown and white wire to the other side of the sending unit. And I got movement out of the gauge. So, it's new gauge. So I turned the sending unit. It's got a little, it almost looks like a really small oven knob. So anyway, turned that and the gauge would go up and down. So I knew that was good. So I put it back. Still didn't have anything. So I assumed that it was the wire. You'll see that I changed the wire out. A lot of debate. A lot of guys are using lamp cord on that. The wire looked similar to lamp cord. The thing of it is, as you can tell, obviously, this is a rubber product, whereas lamp cord's plastic. And I just really felt like it would break down in the weather, sun and stuff. So I thought, well, the best thing to do is maybe buy a inexpensive extension cord, outdoor extension cord. That's what I did. On outdoor extension cord, you'll see pictures of it, and I use that. It's red and black. I got red in my boat, so whatever. Looks like it kind of matches. So anyway, so you'll see here that I've put. I couldn't use the existing connectors on it on the sending unit, so I soldered back there. I did some heat shrink. I did some, I've got some of that waterproof fusion tape. So I used fusion tape on it. Fusion tape, when you wrap it, it melts into itself. And then I put 3 layers basically of shrink tubing back and forth. So it should have a good seal. It's a ground anyway, so it's not, it's not uber important, but definitely want to keep it dry. I'm sure it'll stay dry the way I've got it sealed. So anyway, put everything back together. Still nothing. So I'm like, what the heck? So I figured one of two things. It was either where those 2 wires, the sending unit wire to the gauge, where those 2 met, that there was something wrong, or there was something wrong where the ground met with that. And they're all on the same block. Just that part of this block is plastic and isolates the 2 sending unit wires from ground, and then the other one obviously goes to ground. So I pulled them loose, tried it, still nothing. So then I took the sending unit, the ground wire, so you got a black and then a brown wire from the sending unit. I took the black wire and I put it to ground, and all of a sudden the gauge worked. So I think I had 2 issues. I had, number 1 issue was the fact that the gauge was bad, and number 2 issue was the fact that I didn't have a good ground. So I put a bigger ring terminal on it, run it over the negative on the battery. Now it all works. So let you see that here. So all works. That's what I wanted. Very happy with that. A little bit bigger job than I thought it was going to be. But, isn't it always when you're messing with electricity and grounds and potential shorts and all that? So, I liked the fact of using that outdoor extension cord. I think on the trim limit switch on the other side, I'm going to I bought a 25-foot cord, so I've got extra cord left. I'm going to actually use that on the trim limit switch also. So, because that rubber cord, I mean, that stuff's 30 some years old. This boat's an 82, so it's it's yeah, it's time for that wire to go bye-bye. So anyway, gonna pull that. Been exposed to the sun, forever. So get rid of that and hopefully have a pretty good system back there.